What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and I have a theory, which is not really mine. It was actually sent to me by my editor, which he came up with based on a comment that was left by one of you guys, which is that Kang the Conqueror's plan has already started. And in fact, it started before the events of Loki, and that we're going to see it play out in its totality, leading all the way through Phase 6 and into the Kang Dynasty. Now, here's the thing. I know a lot of you guys right off the bat are going to say, Rob, that doesn't make any sense because Kang the Conqueror didn't come into existence until He Who Remains was killed by Sylvie at the end of Loki. Yes and no. The reason why it seems that way is because you're not taking into account the cascading effect. Now, this is something that hasn't really been explained in the MCU. It was explained in Jonathan Hickman's Fantastic Four, which we know the Marvel Cinematic Universe borrows very, very heavily from the work of Jonathan Hickman because it's so complex and it offers so much explanation on the back end in terms of the significant things that go on in Marvel Comics outside of simply just superhero antics. The way that this was explained, and we can kind of apply it to the events of Loki in order to make it make more sense, that if we look at the explanations that were given to us, because they were all over the damn place, that Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness has in effect cleared all of that up. That what we have right now and what we got when it came to the ending of Loki is that at some point along the line, the multiverse came into existence. You had all these different alternate realities, and some of those alternate realities basically gave us Immortus, or He Who Remains, whatever you want to call him. But some of the other realities gave us Kang the Conqueror. As we know from the Loki show, a war broke out between the various Kangs, which threatened to destroy the entirety of the multiverse. This led to He Who Remains, one of the different versions of himself that came into existence. This led to him basically weaponizing Goliath and then in turn wiping out all the different alternate realities across the multiverse that would have led to Kang the Conqueror. This allowed him to basically create the sacred timeline and then form the TVA to ensure that any alternate reality that could come into existence that would lead to Kang would be destroyed. And that's how the multiverse just functioned for however in the hell long. When Sylvie killed He Who Remains, it allowed the sacred timeline to just expand unchecked, and all these different alternate realities started spawning, which of course inevitably led to different variants of Kang the Conqueror. One of these variants is likely more powerful than all the others, and that's the variant of Kang that we will see in Ant-Man Quantumania, as well as the Kang Dynasty, likely the one leading the show, if we end up getting a Council of Kang of sorts. And so what this means is that if we take the cascading effect into account, then in effect, things happened in this way. That what happened here is that when Immortus, when He Who Remains died, and the multiverse started spawning out for a time, there was simply just He Who Remains who was just laying dead, and that was basically it. But with these alternate realities coming into existence, it means now there were all these different variants of Kang coming into existence. As we know, Kang the Conqueror has the ability to time travel. So likely what happened is one of those Kangs, the Prime Kang, the one we saw in Quantumania, went back in time and ensured his own victory during the original Kang War, basically killing He Who Remains or Immortus somewhere along the line. This creates a cascading effect, right? It's like a meteor hitting the ocean and creating this tidal wave, except in this instance, the meteor is Kang the Conqueror killing Immortus during the Kang War, and the tidal wave being the resulting change across the entirety of the timeline. This is the reason why when Loki got pushed back to the TVA headquarters, that there were no statues of the Timekeepers, that instead it was a statue of Kang because he was the one running the show. So then the question has to be asked, if that's the case, then what's this plan that Kang has basically set in motion? And the answer to this is that in effect, a lot of things pretty much stayed the same. That one of the things that was established over the course of the TVA is that there are absolute constants that not even Immortus can change, and by extension, seemingly not even Kang can change. There are things that just have to happen. There's no way to undo them, there's no way to stop them, there's no way to prevent it. We saw this happen in a few different instances. The What If episode for that alternate reality version of Doctor Strange that kept trying to save Christine Palmer, that's an example of that. But we also know that there are some players there that actually had the ability to defeat Kang the Conqueror. So we say, for example, that somebody like Tony Stark, who used the quantum realm to develop time travel, that he in turn now has the same level of power as Kang the Conqueror. That if Tony Stark had lived, that he could in turn orchestrate a kind of multiversal Avengers team and then go back into the past and presumably win the Kang War in some form or fashion, and that would basically lead to a restoration of the sacred timeline. So what better way to get Tony Stark out of the picture than to just let him die, than to not step in, than to not do anything to save the life of Tony Stark. The idea of Captain America going back into the past, living his life with Peggy Carter, and then basically growing old, that's part of Kang's plan, because now Captain America's out of the picture. That when you look at the Fantastic Four, which presumably took off in the 1960s, and whether we go with my theory, which is that they're literally just trying to find a way back, but they just keep ending up in alternate realities, that Kang the Conqueror allowed that to happen. He allowed the Fantastic Four to end up in the time stream because he knows that they're gonna get lost there, that it allows them to be removed from the equation. All these things, the way that things have unfolded, have actually been allowed to unfold by Kang the Conqueror. This is almost evidenced by what we saw at the end of the Loki TV show, when you basically had Loki arriving back at the TVA headquarters, and you literally had like Morbius and Morbius, right? Like Owen Wilson's character, who was basically saying, no, right? Like he wants us to let the multiverse unfold, right? He wants us to let the multiverse spiral out of control. That the actions of Kang isn't so much about stopping a thing from happening, that the idea of Kang is actually letting things happen, specifically if that thing happens to benefit him, which is really, really awesome because it stands in the way of like everything we've seen. Thanos was about stopping the other Avengers from getting the Infinity Stones so he could have them for himself. The Avengers were trying to stop Thanos so they could have the Infinity Stones and they could keep him from blinking out half the life in the universe. It's one of those things that constantly goes on. With the TVA out of the picture, or at least the TVA under the control of Kang the Conqueror, it would make perfect sense that if the TVA becomes aware of the fact that the Fantastic Four are out there in the multiverse, that Kang says, no, let them travel. Because if they're out there, they're not stopping me, right? They don't even know that I exist. They have no idea what's going on with me. Why make them aware of that if I don't have to? That's kind of what's going on. He's operating in a very, very secretive way. But a lot of these things are always happening, right? A lot of these things are a result of Kang's actions. Thor losing his identity, no longer being the serious Thor we know and being the comedic Thor, that's Kang allowing that to take place. Instead of stepping in, or instead of orchestrating the timeline in such a way to where Thor doesn't decapitate Thanos, or Thor does aim for the head and kill him in Infinity War, and Thor maintains his serious nature, that instead Thor loses himself, right? The Incredible Hulk being pacified, all those different things, all of that is a result of Kang. That is effectively hands off. That he's actually allowing the timeline to unfold this way as opposed to making changes to the timeline. Because as things stand right now in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there's seemingly no one out there in the Earth 616 reality that could stop Kang the Conqueror. They don't have access to time travel anymore. I mean, they kind of do, but without really having Tony Stark to essentially guide them, they don't really know how to chart those waters, right? Steve Rogers is gone. You kind of have a new Avengers team. Everything's ragtag and it's in disarray. The entire chaotic nature of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the disorganization of the superhero teams, that's all part of Kang's plan. Because if they're disorganized and they're scattered and they're all over the damn place, they're not marshaling their forces and they're not working to defeat Kang. This disorganization is seemingly happening across the multiverse. The Earth 838 universe with the Illuminati is the only reality we've seen so far where you still have a cohesive superhero team operating. In the what if stories and seemingly all of those, the superhero forces of those worlds are either dead, annihilated in some conflict, right? Some event where Thanos won, or like Ultron killed everybody, or they're just kind of ragtag, they're scattered, and things are all over the place. It leaves the field open for Kang to operate without being challenged in any capacity, for him to be completely and totally unobstructed. That's my thought here. Right now, the kicker to this is that it's one thing to have a whole bunch of disorganized Avengers across the timeline. It's another to actually have things start changing and to have various Avengers traveling around and basically marshaling and recruiting other Avengers to a singular team, which would come in the form of the multiversal Avengers that we saw in Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers. Oh my God. But there's a giant gaping hole in this theory. There's a giant gaping hole here. And the answer, and the hole is this: if Kang sits at the end of time, and if Kang is basically occupying the same role that Immortus held, which is that basically he knows exactly how things are going to end, then Kang would simply just stop that from happening. He would literally stop anybody from going out there and basically marshaling the Avengers teams. He would stop those teams from coming into existence. But that can also be answered by the question, that's why Kang is killing Avengers. He's wiping them out. He's wiping out anybody out there that could present a credible challenge to him, and specifically targeting different people. In Marvel Comics, for example, Hank Pym Ant-Man is the scientist supreme of the Marvel Comics universe, meaning he's the greatest scientific mind of that particular universe. There's no reason to believe that when it comes to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, that Scott Lang will eventually reach that point. We've kind of seen it play out to a little bit when he's understanding science by studying the quantum realm and things like that. I mean, do I think he'll be a scientific genius? I don't know, but it doesn't mean that he won't be a significant person. We could also look at the idea of Wanda potentially being alive, that what you have are these Nexus beings, individual beings that are out there that by whatever manner and whatever means would end up playing a crucial role in defeating Kang, and those are the various Avengers that Kang is killing. That in that instance, when he tells Scott Lang, like, you're an Avenger, right? Like, didn't I kill you? That he killed a Nexus version of Scott Lang in an alternate reality. There's any number of possibilities here. But that's the overall theme, that like Kang's plan, it's already happening. We simply just don't know it yet. The things that we've seen, or we simply hadn't recognized it yet, but the things that we've seen take place over the course of the MCU, those things are happening because Kang's allowing them to. Because by allowing Iron Man to die, allowing Captain America to go into the past and basically live, grow old and then come back to the present, Thor losing his identity, the Incredible Hulk being pacified, it was all instigated by Kang. It was all initiated by him or allowed to happen because it would remove all of them from the landscape. So, let me know what you guys think down here, right? Like, let me know what you guys think in the comment section. I mean, obviously you guys are going to poke holes in the theories, you guys always do, but let me know how you guys feel about this. But thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.